So you want to be a Python programmer. Maybe you already know the basics. Maybe you can write a short Hello World program or some other little very simple, unimpressive thing, and you want to get into a larger project. Well, that's what this video is about. Let's perform a process to come up with a really cool project that can be useful. And I'm going to choose something that can be useful to me. Now, behind me, let's see, let me point to it. Oh, can't do it. Okay, over here. If you look outside this window, you'll see a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is a way to keep track of expenses and income and see how you're doing and all that kind of stuff. And it's fairly labor intensive. You've got to enter the things separately, and you can look at it and toil with it and so on. But if you're not into spreadsheets, maybe that's not what you want. So what I'm going to do is propose that we come up with a program, start small and add to this, but we'll do it in such a way that we can add to it and it will be nice and neat. And that's the idea here. So programming. Now, if we're going to keep track of expenses, we could call it expense report. Or we could call it, I don't know, expenses, income expenses, tally sheet, I don't know. I'm going to call it net worth. Net worth? What's that all about? So eventually I want to capture not only the things you spend at the store, probably using a credit card, or things that you have money coming in, like a paycheck, or other sources of income. Maybe you've got a second job, and maybe you do other stuff. And all the different things that you have to pay out, like income taxes, or other things like that. So what I want to do is make it so that the user can just be prompted by the program, enter the stuff, and then maybe request a report at the end of it. Probably won't be exactly a spreadsheet to start with, but we could expand on this thing, keep expanding on it and building it, and come out with version 1, version 2, and all this. So think big. Think big. Don't think small. Don't think of something simple. But we're going to try to apply, at least I, am going to try to apply things that I have learned from being a software engineer. And that is to meet requirements. So we're going to have to actually write the requirements for our system so we can see, so we have a target for how we want the program to run. Now, I think that's enough talking. So let me next look at the spreadsheet itself and get some ideas. So you can see, here's one way of doing it now that's manual, using the Excel spreadsheet and doing some calculations that way. And then we'll think about doing it with Python. Python's a good learning language, and it is what we're using. So get used to it. All right, hopefully this is large enough that you can read the print. And you see at the top here, if you can see my little cursor arrow moving around, I've got income from job, miscellaneous income, income from odd job. And notice this is in green. That's in green because that's money coming in, so that's more green for us. And then it automatically totals it up. So, oh cool, I don't even need a program. I'll just use this spreadsheet. Then we have mortgage, assuming you have you're not renting, but you're actually buying a home and you're paying your monthly payments. Here's repairs, daily living, here's groceries, here's transportation down here, here's your gas costs. I drive a Prius, so my gas costs are pretty low. car payments, internet, any little insurance fees, phone bills. Here's mobile phone down here. And there's some stuff down here, a checking start balance. Here's a credit card start balance, and there's your net start. So somewhere along here, we'd like to get a net income. So that should give you the starting point. And next, I'm going to switch to a scene where rather than a spreadsheet behind me, I've got a text file. And we're going to open that text file, and we're going to develop this as we go. So let's see how that works out. Okay, are you ready to brainstorm for our project? Well, it's my project because this isn't a real classroom or anything. I can't get feedback from you. But anyway, if you recall, let me just repeat what I said. This is going to be Python's net worth. Whatever. Let's get started. Enough of this blabbertating. Okay, my picture's out of the way so you can see the text and we can start going here. I'm going to enter. If you see here, I've got done a, here's my directory of different things that we're doing, and Python net worth design.txt. Boy, that sounds official. So let me open that up with a super small efficient editor called Nano, and let's see if we can enter some stuff in here. Can't type today. What's going on here? All right, there we go. A clean slate. Clean slate, so let's begin to think of some ideas. Okay, what's in net worth? What's in net worth? Well, let's see. Net worth equals assets minus liabilities. Okay, assets minus liabilities. I took an accounting course recently, so hey, this stuff's kind of neat. So anyway, net worth is assets minus liabilities. I'm just going to put that up there as kind of a placeholder because eventually we'll get to that. But originally, let's start with some things like income, expenses, and what kinds of income, what kind of expenses. Okay, and then we have under expenses, let me put a little tab over there and say we have expense categories. And let's give examples of expense categories. Groceries, car payment, rent. Let's see, what else do we have? What are other expenses? And then I'll just put etc. there. So we kind of get the idea. Now, income categories, well, let's go ahead and create some of those things. Let me move the cursor up there and put a little tab, and we'll say income categories let's say, what do we call that? Salary. Let's just call it wages. And wages and capital gains. So capital gains would be investments. And I'll put interest down here, but banks pay so little interest, I don't know if we want to even include that, but I'll put a question mark beside that. So these things here, income categories. In fact, let me come over here and put a tab there and put a tab there and put a tab here and a tab there. And then we'll say up here, let me move my cursor up there and move that down a little bit, and then let's say these are inputs. So we've got to have our program come up with inputs for these things. And let's see, what are outputs then? Outputs from our program. Let's see, outputs. Notice how I'm just kind of free form going through this and figuring out what's going to happen. What are outputs? Outputs would be, let's see, what would the outputs be? Oh, it'd be total income, total income. It's kind of boring here. Total expenses. So how does that figure out? Well, we come up here and we've got income categories, expenses, and all those things add together. Then let me come up here and go over here and talk about, are there any more inputs? Okay, this is one thing that I like to keep track of. That is checking account balance and credit card balance. And my wife is wondering what this video is. This video is about making your own budgeting thing or net worth or some kind of crazy thing. And let's see, what would this be? We could also put, let's say, investments value. And of course, the investments value are going to change. So if you've got a way to look things up, then you can look at the investments value. And down the outputs, here's the one I'm really interested in, is somewhere along the line, we're going to have net worth. And that's going to be somehow along the lines, we're going to have total assets total liabilities. For instance, the credit card balance is going to be a liability. And let's think of some other things up here for the inputs. That would be investments value. What if you're buying a home or something like that? And that's going to be let's see, a mortgage on a house or something else, and we're going to have a auto loan. And I already talked about the revolving debt on your credit card, which you want to watch out for your credit card balance. You don't want that to get too much out of hand, which this little program should help us out. Now, you kind of getting the idea? We got the inputs, we got the outputs, and I guess the program's going to take care of that. Now, let's talk about the design a little bit. Let's go down here. And what do we mean by design? Well, by design, that means that we want to design. How do we want that to work? Let's see. Just thinking things through as I move along here. Let's talk about this as maybe prompts for each input. For each input, okay, let's say each input category, for each expense category, or some other way of doing that. Maybe just enter the expense and then choose from a category. Prompts for expense and category and expense category and expense category choices. And you also want a prompt or the ability to add new category. How about that? And let's see, we've got add new category, for any expense, income, asset, liability, etc. Kind of get the idea? So we've got all this stuff set up. Now before we move on, I better do this. I better do a Control O for write out and save this thing so I don't lose my thought process. So that's our opening setup for the design. And we can actually start programming now because we got kind of a thought process going here. And it doesn't have to be real fancy at the beginning, but we do have to think about we want this thing to be organized. I'm going to close off now for video 0, which I'm calling this video 0 in this thing because this was a design thing where we're just doing thought processes of what we want this net worth program to be like. See you next video where we'll start looking at Python.